How you doing, folks? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to ALCHEMOTO's workshop. Now, we've not been in the workshop for a while because I've had no problems with any of the bikes. But when I was on the big one with Sportster Sickness on the 48, on the way back, I noticed I had a little oil leak on the rear, which is coming from the rear rocker gasket. So we're going to do that. But also, we've been busy on tour with the Pan Am as well, and we've stretched the chain to its max on the Pan Am at 15k. Coming back from Scotland, so that's stripped down now. I'm waiting for a chain and sprockets and some other bits to go on that bike. But for now, we're going to concentrate on the rear rocker gasket for the 48. And as usual, I always keep these in stock. It's genuine James's gaskets, which are brilliant gaskets for this bike, well known and well used. So we're going to go ahead, rip off the rocker, show you guys how to do it at home. Let's get a bit closer. Okay, so the first thing we've done is just remove the seat, give us more access. We've got to take off these caps as well, which they should just pop off like that. Can be a bit of a pain, which will show the cap head screws we've got to remove on here. So that's the first thing. Got to unclip these, we've got to snip these off, unclip this plug, and then take this plug off as well from this sensor in here. So that's the first job we've got to do. Okay, so these are a 3/16 key. If you haven't got a 3/16 key, you can use a T30 Torx instead. It's a perfect fit. I've just loosened these ones off. You should have Imperial and metric stuff in your garage anyway, but if you haven't and you've got a Torx, then you can use that one. So we'll do the other side, get these off, undo this, which is easy enough. Pull off the clip, and then that one, snip there. If you've got the factory sheath on it, it'll be different than this. Obviously, this has had a bit of a cable tidy, so we've not got the plastic underneath here. Much easier without, okay? So that's ready to come off. We'll take these two off, and then the other side. Okay, so once you've got the 4 bolts off, it's just easy. Pop it like that, and then we need to cut these, snip these 2 cable ties, give it some room, and then maneuver it around. It's a little bit difficult. You can do it without the tank off, and that's what I'm trying to show you guys, just to make the job easier. Okay, we just pull that HT lead off, and then you can just about get it out from this side. Pull the sensor plug through. And with a little bit of jiggling, top one's off. Okay, folks, so for the lower rocker, we need 3 different sizes of spanner. We need a 1/2 inch, a 7/16, and a 3/16 key or T30 Torx as well. So the T30 Torx, you've got 2 small ones here and then one on the other side. So that's on your near side of your bike. And then your 1/2 inch ones will be the 4 main bolts here on the top, okay? And then your 7/16 is going to be these 2 just down here, okay? One there, and then there's one on the other side. So what I use, I've got this brilliant little Blue Point snap-on adjustable ratchet. It's a pass-through one. So you can see these sockets, they pass all the way through. You pull that back and you lock them in like so. So you've got great access, and they don't stick up that far. They're very, very shallow as well. So ideal for tight spaces like this. I've already slackened these off, by the way, so they weren't loose. So let's go ahead and get them off. Okay, so like I said, even with the tank on, you still can get these bolts out. They're quite long. Pump them down, keep them safe. Now remember, there's no valve settings on this as well, with them being hydraulic, so you've nothing to worry about with valve settings when you're putting it back. Not like on some of the earlier models. So with this one, it's nice and easy. So don't worry about that, because obviously you've got your valves, tappets, and springs and everything underneath on the other side. You don't have to worry about those so much. The only thing is when you put it back together, which we'll show you when we get to that stage. Okay, so when you release the 3rd bolt on the top, which is the inner, I'm sure I only said it was 2 7/16 earlier on, I think I did. But it's your third one. When you start to release that, you'll see that the lower rocker is actually now starting to come loose. And then it's the fun bit then, trying to get it out from underneath. Front one, you've got a lot more access, so you don't have to worry about that, but this one is a tad little bit more fiddly. So last bolt out, and then there we go. So the rocker cover actually came out from the other side. I'm just going to attempt to try and get this out from this side. I'm not sure whether I can. Try and pull the push rods out. One push rod. In fact, it's definitely, no, we can do it. We can do it from this side. And there we go, folks. Lower rocker off. So I'll have a look at that gasket. I think I can see where it's actually failed now. One bit there. It might just be where we took it off, and you can see in this corner here. So that makes sense of being in the far corner where it was leaking from. So I think we found the problem. Okay, so once you've got your lower rocker off, what you want to do is just make sure you've got no bits of old gasket left. So a little bit of a gasket scraper. And then if you've got anything left over, just give it a little bit of a scrape along there. You can clean it with a little bit of wire wool, but I don't like doing that where any bits is going to go down inside the push rod tubes. So better off just using one of these. There's a little bit on that side. And then forcing it onto the outside so nothing drops inside onto any moving parts. Once you've done that, bit of a wipe over brake cleaner, and then we're ready to put the new gasket on. Okay, the same goes for the lower rocker itself as well. So when you remove the gasket, obviously it's going to be in bits and pieces. You can see the other bits we're going to take off here. And then when you peel it off, you'll have the residue underneath. So we're just going to make sure all that is nice and clean and everything is removed. Okay, as easy as that. And then just make sure there's no little bits and pieces. A little bit of a wipe off with brake cleaner or just a little bit of mild solvent. Just be careful as well, because it is aluminium or aluminum if you're from the US of A. So if you're trying to use something like a screwdriver to scrape that off, you might mark the actual alloy, and you don't want to do that. Easy as that, folks. So we'll clean that down now, and then we're ready for the new gasket. Okay, folks, so when you're ready, get your gasket, and if you don't know which one to order, that is the part number there. So it's for Evolution Sportster 1984 to present, so there's no difference in all that time scale. So everything just remained the same. Okay, so take your gasket out, and you'll notice it does actually say on here, use no sealer. And it says this side up, but ignore that because it says this side up as well on the other side here. So that's a little bit confusing if you don't know what you're doing. So it doesn't really matter. The gasket is actually symmetrical on both sides, so it doesn't really matter. Make sure you pass through the sensor. Okay, and then there you go. We're ready to put it back together. Okay, folks, don't forget to put your push rods back in, and I have seen it done, or else you'll get a shock when you try and start your engine up. Now remember, we had to pull those out when we pulled off the rocker from the other side, from this side. So we're going to put it back from the other side and then drop it over onto the push rods. Okay, again, these are symmetrical, but I always make sure when I take them out that they go back in their respective tube. Okay, so you've got your rear one and your front one there, and they're both in the relevant position. Obviously, it's quite difficult not to move the gasket, so we've got to be careful and sit that down as flush as you can so that the holes are somewhat in position. And then when we put the bolts in, we'll wobble them so it'll just wobble the gasket back into place just in case it's moved ever so slightly away from its location. Okay, folks, so with the underside now nice and clean, we're going to pop that in from the other side. So always the most awkward bit is the sensor. It just seems to get in the way. Okay, so it's a little bit fiddly, but once you've got it laid down, just remember that there's still going to be a little bit of pressure on the valves. So you're going to have some movement there. So what you want to do is try and line the 3 center holes up with the center bolts first, and that should line the gasket up. So if you're not sure, just put a little screwdriver down and a torch and make sure that the holes are lined up. Okay, so just a little bit of a tip. So when you've dropped your push rods back into the push rod tubes, when you're setting this down, obviously you're going to have a little bit of pressure. You want to make sure, okay, that your rockers are over the top of your tappets there. And the most important thing is making sure that your push rods are underneath on here, okay? If not, then it's game over. So that's the most important thing. So you know that when you've got those on, you're more or less lined up. And then what I'll do is put this bolt in here. You can lift that up and put it through the gasket hole, slide it over, and then just thumb it up a little bit with the socket. And then the same with the other 2 on the other side. Obviously, it's going to be easier with the tank off to see what you're doing, but I'm just sort of saying that you can, and showing you guys, you can do it with the tank in position to save a little bit of work. It's not that difficult. You've just got to just slow down a little bit and make sure everything's lined up and everything's clean before you put it back. Okay, folks, so we'll pop down the main bolts. So these are the 4 1/2-inch bolts. And again, just thumb them down. Okay, so we're going to switch now to the torque wrench, and we're going to do the 4 main bolts and then torque them down. I'm going to do them to 18 foot-pounds. What we're going to do is do them opposite. So we'll do this one, and then we'll do the one at the back, and then you can either do it this way and then the one at the top. Either way, as long as you're doing them opposite each other. Okay, easy as that. There's not a massive amount in it. So the 3 smaller ones now at 10 to 13 foot-pounds, so we'll do them at 13 foot-pounds, and then you've got the 2 Allen bolts, which are inch-pounds, 90 to 120. I'll convert them over to foot-pounds, but because they're only sort of a locator, they don't need to be, they are specific, but don't have to be so specific once you've got the others torqued up. So we'll go ahead and do the inners, put the Allen bolts in, and then all we've got to do then is put the top rocker cover back on. Okay, so your 2 Allen bolts here, which are your 3/16 or T30 torques, they are only equivalent to around 8 foot-pounds. So it's not an awful lot at all. Like it says, they're more like a locator. So you don't have to be too specific with them. So what we're going to use for them, because they are quite awkward, and again with the tank in the way, and I will specify that with your torque wrench, if you're using, say, a 1/2-inch torque wrench and you've got your socket on, you might not have enough room to clear this. So try and look for a shallow socket. Look for a nice low socket, and if you have a 3/8, that's even better. Try and go for a 3/8 torque wrench if you're going to purchase one, and a short stubby socket. That's what you need for that. But for these, all we're going to do is the tighten until you can't pull anymore, the 2-finger method. So we know that those are down. Same with the one at the rear. Pop that in. And then do the 1/4 turn method on top. So 2 fingers, one on there, and then 1/4 turn just like that. And then that is sufficient for that. You're around about 8 to 10 foot-pounds easily by my experience. And trust me, I've done a lot of cylinder heads before using the 2-finger method, and none of them has ever failed. You'll get all the aficionados now getting the books out and telling me that I should have done everything by the book, but trust me, you don't need to just on them. We've torqued the other ones up and that's fine. These ones, not so specific, and they are very awkward to get in, especially to torque them up unless you've got like a 1/4-inch torque wrench. So for what it's worth, tighten them up and a 1/4 turn, and that's it, job done. So we can go ahead and put the top rocker on now, put everything back together, and that's it, folks. Okay, some folk are probably going to ask the question about the top gaskets as well, which you've got one on the inside of here and then one just on the top, like a rubber gasket. I've never actually had one of them fail. There's nothing wrong with the condition of those on with them being rubber. Over time, if they're old ones, yeah, maybe 10 years plus, they might go hard. So I would probably recommend changing them at that case. But with mine, not a problem with them, not concerned about them, so they're staying as they are. So again, that's it now. We just got to put the top bolts in here. Again, these do have a torque setting on these top bolts as well, but the setting's so small, I'm not too worried again. So again, it's the finger tight, tighten it till you can't tighten anymore, and then a quarter of a turn, and just do them opposite, and then don't worry about it. That's it, job done. Like I said, it is a little bit finicky with the tank in the way, but you can get at it with a nice compact tool like I've got. It's just a small little T30 I'm using for this. And if you want to check it after a hot cycle as well, after a run, then you can go ahead and do that just to make sure that there is no movement on these at all. But I've never really had a problem. Easy as that, folks. Okay, folks, so that's it. The rear lower rocker cover gasket complete. So it's not that bad a job. It's done with the simplest of tools, without the tank removed, just a little bit of care and attention, decent gasket, take your time, make yourself a brew, and the job's done. Probably give yourself a couple of hours and then your leak is non-existent. It's as easy as that. So I think the front one I did about 2 years ago, and then the rear one obviously just started leaking now. So between the lifespan of my bike, that's 2 gaskets within 6.5 years, which isn't bad maintenance really. So just look after your bike and it will look after you. But all we got to do now is make sure the bike starts. So let's spin the camera around and see if it starts up. Moment of truth, guys. Will it start first time? But just remember, this bike's not been started for about 5 weeks. Initial. There we go. Success. Dry for now. So always monitor it after you've done a repair anyway. So after the first 30, 40 miles, just get down, have a look and make sure there's no weeps. After that, you should be good to go. Always good to periodically check anything that you've put on and tightened. So just make sure nothing's come loose. You can't see anything internally. Just make sure anything, hoses, clamps, or everything you put back correctly, and they're not going to be anywhere near hot exhaust when you're riding. Apart from that, good to go. Okay folks, so that's it. So I hope you've learnt a little bit about maintenance for your bike, just in case you get the dreaded leak on your Sportster, or for most other Harleys for that matter. They're all pretty similar in the way they work. So like I said, 2 hours, bike complete, ready to ride. But on that note, if this is your first time watching ALCHEMOTO, please do hit that subscribe button, like and share and comment if you dare. Until the next time folks, we'll see you later. I'm signing out.